with reason, measure with science, act with ethics, reduce the pain, increase the joy, humanity remains.
The story of the collapse of Sears, the historical retail giant. Imagine with me, my friend, a company that once had it all, the largest distribution network on the continent, the unshakable trust of hundreds of millions of people, the grandest logistical fleet, and the tallest skyscraper in the world carrying its name as a symbol of absolute dominance. Imagine that this very company invented the concept of shopping from home, teaching people how to buy everything from watches and umbrellas to cars and prefabricated houses with the simple push of a button. Or rather, a postcard. Then suddenly, in a way that seems to a superficial observer like pure dark magic, this empire collapses and vanishes completely from the scene, leaving everyone to repeat the usual lazy chant, "The internet killed them. Amazon killed them. It was just bad luck and ruthless technological evolution." But let us be candid and rational for a moment. Luck does not build empires, nor does luck destroy them. Success and failure are always the inevitable outcomes of calculated or flawed decisions made within a specific context. Success occurs when you gather contextual data rationally and adapt your actions to minimize human pain and ensure the survival of the institution. Catastrophic failure, on the other hand, happens when you blind yourself to reality, succumb to logical fallacies, and destroy the system yourself from within. The true story of the fall of Sears is not a tale of a sudden new technology that caught everyone off guard. It is an epic human and managerial drama about how leadership blinded by illusion can ignore scientific data and murder a commercial entity that possessed every tool for survival. Let us dive deep into the details to understand how the ultimate model of innovation morphed into a lifeless corpse in the world of commerce. Chapter 1. The Rise of Sears and the Miracle Catalog Revolution. To understand how this titan collapsed, we must first perform an accurate scientific description of the environment in which it was born. In the 1880s, specifically around 1886, rural American farmers lived in a localized monopolistic hell. Local general stores in small villages sold inferior goods at exorbitant prices because farmers had no alternative. Merchandise was confined to local retailers, and traveling to the nearest city required days on horseback. Within this exact context, a railway station agent named Richard Warren Sears entered the scene. Richard began selling leftover watches by mail order after observing a clear data point. Farmers desperately needed accurate and affordable timekeeping tools, and the expanding railroad network now spanned the entire American continent. In 1893, Richard partnered with watchmaker Alva Curtis Roebuck to officially establish Sears, Roebuck & Co. It was here that a methodology of context data collection based on rigorous scientific analysis manifested: description, critique, and inference. Richard executed a series of steps that reshaped society. The description: millions of isolated farmers with empty pockets and no automobiles yet. The critique: local stores exploited these farmers, escalating their financial pain with outrageous profit margins and substandard products. The inference: if we consolidate merchandise in a massive central warehouse in Chicago, print a comprehensive illustrated catalog, and mail it directly to every home in America, we bypass the local middleman, offer significantly cheaper goods, and deliver them right to their doorstep via rural free delivery. In 1896, Sears issued its iconic catalog, later known as the Wish Book. The catalog spanned hundreds of pages and offered everything: clothing, farm equipment, firearms, furniture, and even musical instruments. A fundamental context parameter was modified. Instead of the customer going to the product went to the customer. This action successfully passed two elimination filters: institutional survival and pain minimization. The decision ensured the long-term survival and sustainability of the company through immense cash flows, while simultaneously drastically reducing the financial and physical pain of the American farmer, granting them savings and a quality of life they had never dreamed of. As American society shifted in the 1920s with the rise of automobiles and paved roads, Sears did not stop gathering contextual data intelligently. In 1925, under the leadership of Julius Rosenwald, the company observed that people were migrating from rural areas to cities and suburbs, and that the automobile had become the primary mode of transportation. What did Sears do? They did not stubbornly cling to the paper catalog. Instead, they altered their actions based on the new data, opening massive brick-and-mortar retail stores in the suburbs with vast parking lots. These stores became comprehensive community hubs where men found building tools and automotive supplies through legendary proprietary brands created by Sears, such as Craftsman for tools and Die Hard for batteries. Women found furniture and apparel, and children explored toy departments. This dominance reached its apex in 1973 when the company erected the Sears Tower in Chicago, which was the tallest skyscraper in the world at the time. Sears meant to America what water and air meant in daily life, an invincible empire that gathered data scientifically, reasoned logically, and fulfilled the survival and pain minimization needs of millions of families. But, as we all know, my friend, when an institution reaches the peak, a dangerous affliction sets in: arrogance and the cessation of logical thinking. Chapter 2. Strategic Blindness and the Status Quo Bias. By the 1980s and 1990s, the context surrounding Sears began changing at a breathtaking pace, but this time, Sears leadership suffered a structural failure in how it gathered and analyzed data. Competition intensified from new players Sears had never accounted for. Big-box discounters like Walmart and Target emerged with lower prices and more efficient supply chains in smaller suburbs, while specialized category killers like the Home Depot swept in to pull the rug out from under Sears in hardware and home improvement. How did Sears management react to these new contextual realities? Here, leadership fell victim to a fatal web of logical fallacies, chief among them the status quo bias. Management assumed that the Sears brand was simply too big to fail, and that the American consumer would remain eternally loyal regardless of what competitors did. Instead of critiquing reality, renovating deteriorating stores, and doubling down on the logistical efficiency that made them kings of the market, management allowed itself to be distracted by domains entirely unrelated to retail. Sears purchased financial brokerage firms, insurance companies like Allstate, mortgage institutions like Coldwell Banker, and even early online portals like Prodigy. This decision was based on irrational analysis of market data. They assumed that a customer walking in to buy a Kenmore washing machine would simultaneously want to buy stocks, life insurance, and a home mortgage. Operational parameters were altered away from the core business, leaving traditional stores neglected, dimly lit, and consistently out of stock, which directly increased customer pain through a frustrating and degraded shopping experience. However, the ultimate sin, illustrating how flawed decisions can destroy an institution, occurred in 1993. In that exact year, Sears management decided to permanently shut down its famous mail-order catalog division because they deemed it costly and no longer as profitable as before. Do you appreciate the tragic irony here, my friend? In 1993, Sears possessed the largest customer database in the world, the most sophisticated home delivery logistical infrastructure, and a century of experience in remote selling. Yet, instead of digitizing this catalog and transforming it into an e-commerce website based on clear data signaling the dawn of the internet era, they threw the entire division into the trash. Just 1 year after this decision, in 1994, a man named Jeff Bezos founded a tiny online bookstore called Amazon. Amazon did nothing more than pick up the catalog Sears had discarded and place it on a digital screen. Sears fell here into the sunk cost fallacy, continuously dumping billions into salvaging its failing financial services investments rather than admitting its mistakes and reinvesting in its core infrastructure. Having abandoned the scientific process of description, critique, and inference, and having ceased logical reasoning, the institutional infrastructure began to rot, pushing the company directly into the first elimination zone, a severe threat to its very survival. Chapter 3. Eddie Lampert and the fatal social experiment. If the previous chapter represented disease and strategic blindness, this chapter represents a direct bullet to the victim's head. In 2003, a hedge fund manager named Edward Lampert, popularly known as Eddie Lampert, took center stage. Lampert was regarded in the corridors of Wall Street as a financial genius and the golden boy of investment. He had acquired Kmart after its bankruptcy, and in 2005, he executed a move that stunned the financial world. He bought Sears for $11 billion and merged the two companies under Sears Holdings. This merger was supposed to create a retail titan capable of going toe-to-toe with Walmart and Amazon, but what followed was a mad and tragic administrative experiment. Eddie Lampert was deeply enamored with extreme libertarian economic ideology and the philosophies of Ayn Rand, which championed cutthroat competition and survival of the fittest. He decided to apply these theoretical ideologies to the management of Sears, completely abandoning scientific and logical reasoning. Lampert fell into the faulty generalization and the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, assuming that the macroeconomic laws of free market competition among separate companies could be applied literally inside a single corporation. What did Lampert do? He sliced Sears into more than 30 independent business units. The tool division became a separate unit, apparel became a separate unit, marketing became a separate unit, and real estate became a separate unit. Instead of these divisions collaborating toward the ultimate goal of satisfying customers and ensuring institutional survival, Lampert forced them to wage ruthless war against one another. Can you imagine the insanity, my friend? Internal departments within Sears began negotiating and battling each other as if they were enemy corporations. If the apparel department wanted to run an ad in the weekly Sears circular, it had to pay money to the internal marketing department. If the hardware division wanted floor space in stores, it had to rent it from the internal real estate division. This ignited an institutional civil war. Department heads hid data and insights from each other, actively sabotaging rival internal projects to win the annual bonuses Lampert lavished on whichever unit posted the highest profits. Scientific thinking was entirely eradicated. There was no description of market problems, no objective critique, and no logical inference to serve the consumer. Contextual data degenerated into fabricated financial reports designed solely to appease the CEO. Lampert slashed capital expenditure and store maintenance to unheard-of lows. While Walmart and Target were spending billions annually renovating stores and upgrading supply chain technology, Lampert spent a pittance on stores, diverting Sears's cash reserves toward buying back company stock to artificially and temporarily inflate the stock price. Sears stores began to resemble scenes from a post-apocalyptic movie: leaking roofs, torn carpet, dust-covered empty shelves, and demoralized, underpaid employees. Here, Sears's corporate actions turned into a machine of generating pain for employees and customers alike, violating the second core rule of decision-making: maximizing satisfaction and minimizing pain. Management forgot that a commercial institution is a living organism. To survive, it must deliver real value to its environment, not consume its own internal organs in a battle to the death. Chapter 4. Destroying the foundations of survival and exacerbating pain. We now reach the final act of this tragedy, where it becomes glaringly obvious how logically flawed actions lead to absolute failure through the two elimination filters: institutional survival and pain minimization. Between 2010 and 2018, Sears entered a slow, gruesome phase of self-liquidation. Because physical stores were no longer generating profits due to neglected facilities and customers abandoning them from Amazon and Walmart, Eddie Lampert resorted to financial engineering to make the company appear viable. But instead of reforming operational parameters and fixing the retail experience, he began cannibalizing the body's organs to keep a corpse alive. Sears sold off its most prized assets and legendary brands built over a century. It sold its iconic tool brand, Craftsman, to Stanley Black & Decker, auctioned off rights to other core brands, and spun off its prime real estate assets into a real estate investment trust created by Lampert himself called Seritage Growth Properties, forcing Sears to lease back its own stores at high rents. This tactic settled short-term debts by stripping the institution of its foundational survival assets. In this phase, management succumbed entirely to confirmation bias. Lampert repeatedly appeared in media interviews expressing bafflement. "Why is the press attacking us? We are transforming into a lean, asset-light technology company." He dismissed all real-world data, the plummeting financial metrics, expert warnings, and the complaints of millions of shoppers. He locked himself inside an ideological echo chamber, convincing himself that his theoretical model was flawless and that reality itself was wrong. Let us apply the two decision-making filters to what transpired during these final agonizing years. First, institutional survival. Every decision executed, selling assets, slashing maintenance, internal infighting, stripping stores of inventory, destroyed every mechanism of survival. The company was reduced to borrowing money from Lampert's private hedge fund just to meet daily payroll, turning the corporation into a financial hostage to a single individual. Second, pain minimization versus happiness maximization. For the consumer, visiting a Sears store had become a depressing and painful experience in every sense, walking through cavernous empty aisles with no staff to help and finding outdated merchandise if anything was in stock at all. For employees, Sears became a toxic work environment drenched in fear of layoffs and despair over an uncertain future. For small investors and suppliers, it resulted in severe financial losses and bankruptcies due to unpaid bills. On October 15, 2018, the inevitable arrived, an outcome that scientific and logical analysis had predicted for years. Sears Holdings filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in U.S. courts. The company was crushed under more than $11 billion in debt, having shuttered hundreds of stores and displaced tens of thousands of workers. Sears, which had once represented 1% of the entire United States gross domestic product and where 3/4 of the American population shopped online or offline, was reduced to a handful of dilapidated stores counted on two hands. A permanent monument to the fact that past glory protects no one from the consequences of strategic foolishness and the rejection of logic. Conclusion: the philosophy of collapse and the laws of institutional survival. In the end, my friend, let us ask the fundamental question that most superficial analysts ignore. Did technology and the internet murder Sears? The logical and rational answer is absolutely not. The internet was merely a new contextual data point in the environment of commerce. Technology was not an enemy to Sears, rather it was the natural, genetic continuation of the 1896 catalog that built it in the first place. Sears possessed the genetic code for remote shopping decades before Jeff Bezos was even born. Yet it committed administrative and intellectual suicide long before any competitor touched it. The fall of Sears teaches us that any entity, be it an individual, a group, or a massive institution, must remain a humble, scientific reader of reality to ensure its survival. It must deploy a scientific methodology rooted in describing context accurately, critiquing reality without arrogance, and inferring decisions aligned with truth rather than ideological delusions. When you cease gathering genuine data from your context, when you allow logical fallacies like status quo bias and appeal to flawed models to dictate your choices, and when you become consumed by internal conflict while forgetting that your ultimate purpose is to minimize human pain and deliver real value, nature and the market will show no mercy. Success and failure are not dice rolled by luck in the dead of night. They are a strict mathematical equation. Actions aligned with science and logic lead to survival and evolution, while flawed actions rooted in fallacies lead to extinction, even if you happen to own the tallest skyscraper in the world. This is the stark truth revealed by the story of Sears. What did you gain from the video?